Good day, everyone. Welcome to Session 2, Nature of Electronic Commerce. Today, we're going to learn about the evolution, nature, framework, and context of e-commerce, as well as its intermediaries and system fulfillment. To begin with, let us understand the nature and context of e-commerce. Ever since computer was invented and started as a vital tool in the conduct of trade and commerce, transactions between and among business organizations, as well as between a company and its customers or end users, have changed radically. This was particularly obvious, especially during the last quarter of the 20th century and until the onset of the third millennium. The so-called brick and mortar business mode built around the concept of a marketplace, referring to a venue or physical structure where sellers and buyers meet to sell or buy goods and services, then physically hand over the payment, is now getting to be a thing of the past in some business sectors. In its place, the so-called click and mortar business model were in lieu of a marketplace, which is the so-called market space, which is somewhere in the cyberspace where buyers and sellers conduct their businesses using networks of computers linked by wires and cables, well, sometimes wirelessly, as a courtesy of the wonders of convergence of information and communication technology, and in particular with the internet system. To understand further, let us deal with the context of e-commerce. In the e-commerce mode, computer network and the EDI are used, and electronic signals as well as the codes are used to transmit the purchase intent of the buyer, and once the order is confirmed and the payment scheme is agreed upon, third parties or intermediaries are involved to fulfill the delivery of goods or render the service through a process called fulfillment. Let us agree and level our knowledge that when we talk of electronic commerce or e-commerce, it is doing business transactions using various computer-based technologies. E-commerce covers the business processes that are support selling and purchase activities in general. The notion of trade and commerce itself is a broad arena. Producers or sellers of goods and services have their own operating strategies in moving goods and services from point of production to the point of use. Let us understand that electronic commerce is contextualized as trade and commerce activities or transactions largely between and among producers and processors of goods and services rather than between producers or processors and the final consumers or end users of such goods and services. Using this diagrammatic presentation, it explains the difference and the context of e-commerce vis-a-vis electronic business. E-commerce is contextualized in this session as the interplay among business organizations using information and communication technology. E-business, on the other hand, essentially evolves around using information and communication technology of a particular business organization in dealing with its clients deemed to be the end users or final consumers of the product or the service. Operationally, therefore, and as a reference in this session, throughout the discussion of this session, the aspect of e-commerce is more of a business-to-business transaction, whereas e-business is basically of more of business-to-consumer activity. One's knowledge and exposure or experiences with information technology as applied to the conduct of business and commerce gave rise to a variety of perception on the subject matter. Hence, there exists a variety of views or contexts and meanings of e-commerce. It is about exchange of digitized information between parties. This information exchange can represent communication between parties, coordination of flow of goods and services, or transmission of electronic orders. It is technology-enabled. Web browsers are perhaps the best known of the technologies that enable customer interfaces. However, interfaces including the automated teller machines and other electronic banking by phones or e-banking also fall in the general category of e-commerce. Considerably, it is technology mediated. It involves moving beyond technology enabled transactions to technology mediated relationships. Purchases in the marketplace of some business establishments are technology enabled, that in the shoppers have human contacts with cashiers whose cash register does the PC based order processing systems. And finally, it includes the intra and inter-organization activities that support the exchange. Considerably as it includes these phases, it also includes the various activities that directly or indirectly support the marketplace exchanges. To view the categories of e-commerce, we're going to look into perspective of government, business, and consumer. A government to government transactions in e-commerce involves the central and the state government interaction within them. And we have the G2B, or the government to business, which is a relationship between tenders or contracts or selling bonds or e-business processes of government to business. And we have the government to consumer, or G2C, which involves the information to citizens and the online forms and the online services of the government to its final consumers. As we are more formally aware, the B2B, or the business to business, is a more normalized and common model. But as we have here, we have a B2G system wherein there is the procurement process of the business to government relationship as far as this is concerned, such as privatization projects and dealings, as well as agreements and contracts between the government and the business itself. Now, as we move forward, likewise, when we say B2B, it refers to the full spectrum of e-commerce that occur between the two organizations. And then we have the B2C. This is technically refers to the exchange between business and consumers. We have C2G. This is the consumer to government, which is the online filing of the tax returns, the customer transactions towards the government. And also we have C2B. This involves the consumers banding together to present themselves as a buyer or a group, or technically as an individual presentation to the business entities. And we have the C2C, or the consumer to consumer, which refers to the transactions or exchanges between and among the consumers. Let us agree again and be remembered that electronic commerce is doing business transactions using various computer-based technologies, so government will be included in this sector, not only the business and consumer as we normally expect e-commerce will be. To understand further, let us dwell with understanding the framework of e-commerce. While computer is touted as the key player in e-commerce, it is not enough or sufficient that it only takes to have a computer or internet connection to be a player or participant in the world of e-commerce or e-business. This framework shows that e-commerce, in order to fully grow and be a potent force in technology-based trade and commerce, there must be a framework covering four major areas as follows. People, with its components comprising of buyers, sellers, intermediaries, services, information technology, specialists, and management system. Considerably, there should be public policy with components that address the aspects of taxation, legal, and private issues, free speech, and domain names. Technical standards to address the aspects of documentation, security, network protocols, and electronic payment schemes, and organizations to engage in the e-commerce as business partners, business competitors, associations, or organizations to promote e-commerce, and government services to provide support and further develop the e-commerce agenda. Given the above-mentioned areas espoused by various authors, this would follow that there should be a downstream players in the e-commerce arena that are technical in nature, or as enumerated in the diagram. The upper half of the e-commerce framework, as shown, is the aspect cited in the lower e-commerce, which is the infrastructure. This would eventually evolve as market players from the private sector naturally evolve and do the task of dealing with the consumer level clienteles. The events that will ensure or follow the given task or the presence or existence of e-commerce framework, this will give the market players, the e-commerce arena, as well as the prospective clienteles an abstract view of what it takes to be engaged in an e-commerce and eventually become a participant in digital business. Para mas maunawaan natin ang framework na ito ay nagpapakita ng 5 major aspect, which is the people, public policy, marketing and advertisement, support services, business partnership. Ito yung nagsisilbing pillar ng e-commerce kung saan kailangan ng mga support services, kung saan dito naka-enumerate yung 5, yung common business services, kailangan din natin ng EDI o yung tinatawag na distribution of infrastructure. We have the multimedia content o yung tinatawag na network publishing and additional infrastructure and augmenting infrastructure. Considerably, dapat meron din daw network infrastructure na available para magkaroon ng access. And sa dulo, yung pang-fifth is the interfacing of the infrastructure. So, mahalaga ang infrastructure dito. At sa baba nun is yung management o yung pamamahala. So, you have the e-commerce, yung nasa pinakataas, yung bubong, and you have the pillars, which is the people, public policy, marketing, support services, and business. And then, kailangan ng support servicing at kailangan ng infrastructure para nang sa ganun magkaroon ng smooth flowing and then management all throughout. So ito yung tinatawag na framework of e-commerce o yung mga necessity o yung mga inevitable gamit or situations or activities in order to make the e-commerce feasible. Moving forward, let us understand the framework dimensions of e-commerce. This concept is developed by Choi et al. It is a concept of the e-commerce cube, which depicts that a cubic diagram is said to be a figure that indicates a perspective view of what happens in an e-commerce environment. In a traditional commerce scenario, as shown in this diagram, the lower left quadrant or the traditional commerce is characterized by the existence of a physical product that is being pushed or sold by a physical agent, such as marketing agents, marketing representatives, and sales personnel. An example of this scenario is a salesman convincing or doing sales or sales pitch to prospective buyer or a physical product. As trade and commerce become modernized, availing the amenities of electronic commerce, hence going digital and online in its approach, the digital agent takes the place of physical agent and digital product takes the place of physical products. This is typified by electronic platforms such as websites or of online companies and selling digital products in the form of MP3s, MP4s, or in lieu of traditional 45 or 33 records per minute or records per pieces as a standard audio cassette tapes. The transaction involved in the electronic context can be done or completed electronically, including the remittance of payments for products bought online. Hence, in lieu of waiting for the purchase and delivery of this product, as much we consider, for example, a cassette tape or a playlist or a play function product, then there must be a business transaction using a mouse or a keyboard, hence the jargon click and mortar is applied as we discussed previously. The e-commerce cube, as postulated by Choi, points to an inspiration for anyone to avail the promises of e-commerce and be engaged in the pure e-commerce, which is an option for business competitiveness. Para mas maunawaan natin ang e-commerce cube na to or cubic diagram na ito lang ay nagpapakita ng ano ba ang pwedeng maging strategy ng isang nagsisimulang negosyo papunta sa digitalization o pagpunta sa e-commerce. So yun lang ito ay nagpapakita ng mga segments kung hanggang saan tayo at paano tayo makapunta sa pure electronic commerce na pinapakita ng dark blue or darker shaded of blue na strategy of a business operations. Tandaan natin na ito ay combinations ng situations and category. Now, let us understand the movement of e-commerce, because it is very important for us to understand this, because the use of computers in business establishments and their convergence with telecommunication systems fired up the popularizations of e-commerce. So, the informational era of the evolution of e-commerce is characterized by business organizations embracing internet technology for the purpose of having an access. The access stage is typified by employees and making firms' presence in cyberspace. The access stage is typified by employees of business organizations availing of the basic provisions of the internet, for instance, making use of email facility and participating in the news group, as well as taking advantage of the file transfer protocol, and that comes with the internet. Moving to another informational stage is as aspect of some business organizations launching their own electronic homepages to project the company's image in the cyber stage. In this platform or in this mechanism, the website content includes listing of products and services with the idea of using the internet as a launching pad for advertising and marketing its products and services online. Having electronic website and just being online for purposes, web presence, and information dissemination may not mean anything substantial after all, as no business can be possibly generated throughout and such effort. In other words, investment in electronic infrastructure and having a website without generating sales are purely investing in digital decorations. The movement towards the e-commerce progresses through the transactional stage from informational stage. According to Fallenstein and Wood, it is characterized at this stage as the area where the rapid growth of business organizations, already online, transcending from information to e-commerce by integrating the company's information communication technology infrastructure or ICT infrastructure into the mainstream of business activities, moving into the aspect of being transactional. In the third phase of the e-commerce evolution, there comes the integration phase, as evidenced by leveraging on existing infrastructure applications, including the provisions for security, all along with privacy concerns and allowing certain services online. Beyond this, the business organization further enhances its internal and external networks, including upgrading of hardware and software provisions, thus allowing the application, software, and related intermediary services that will eventually allow the business organizations to entertain orders online and consummate business transactions in a mode that is now considered a full e-commerce or e-business stage, or a virtual enterprise, so to speak. Now, let us dwell with understanding with the functions of e-commerce. As far as e-marketing is concerned, advertising on the internet and e-branding is included. For e-tailing, we have selling of products and services on the web store, also web storefront, products exhibition, and online ordering. For e-payment processing, you have the collection and processing of payments over the internet, web-based payment methods, credit card, smart card, e-cash or cybercoin or bitcoin. Shopper's account payment support such as e-wallet and also as digital card is also included in e-payment processing. And the last, for the e-service, you have the web-based technical supports, the web-based product supports, the web-based customer service, and the web-based order and shipping tracking processes. Dwelling with a different perspective by which e-commerce is now greatly influencing and affecting the modern business processes, especially at the onset of the pandemic, where we really have struggles on how we are going to continue our business. Here are some postulations on why or the advantages of e-commerce. Advertising is done in the web, which allows small firms promotional messages out to potential customers in every country in the world. A larger scope it is. A firm can use e-commerce to reach narrow market segments that are geographically scattered. It is also particularly useful in gathering of people who share a common interest that becomes an ideal target markets for specific types of products and services. Also, a business can reduce the cost of handling sales, inquiries, providing price codes, and determining product availability by using e-commerce in its sales support and order-taking processes. Considerably, it increases the purchases and opportunities for the buyer as well as sellers. It increases the speed and accuracy with which business can exchange information, thus reduces the cost on both sides of transactions. It provides with a wider range of choices than traditional commerce, since they can consider many different products and services from a variety of sellers. Considerably, business relationship can change by connecting business that were not directly connected to the pre-internet supply chain. Considerably, e-commerce is advantageous in the society because it enables individuals and business organizations to conduct business anywhere and anytime, 24/7, 365 days a year. It allows some of the merchandises to be sold at a lower price, thus attracting buyers from various strata of society. It also encourages global business contact, thus closing in the gap between countries and among people of varied culture, as well as practices and traditions. It also allows delivery of products and services quickly, thus releasing valuable time and efforts to other productive means. It unleashes human creativity and entrepreneurial potentials, thus resulting to a new and innovative business options. And more often, it opens the door for connectivity and technology amongst people, thus resulting in the development of nations and the citizenry as a whole, both business, people, and the nation or the state at large. Now, let's look on the other side of the coin, which could be the disadvantages of the e-commerce. There might be a number of advantages, but we cannot deny that there are some disadvantages. Now, this disadvantages of e-commerce points out that the underlying technologies of e-commerce are changing so rapidly. It means that when we talk of technology, there is what they call the obsoleteness of technology. The technology might not adapt to another as the phasing of technology changes. So it entails cost on an end because you need to adjust some of your equipments or facilities to accommodate the ever-changing technology. Now, considerably, many firms have had trouble recruiting and retaining employees with technological design and business process skills needed to create an effective e-commerce presence. Another problem facing the firms that want to do business on the internet is the difficulty of integrating existing database and transaction process software designed for traditional commerce into the software that enables e-commerce. This is a common problem in the food industry sector wherein they tend to superb the quality of their product against the mobilizations of the e-commerce as far as the operations are concerned. And some consumers are still fearful of sending their credit card's number over the internet because of the phishing issues, because of the privacy issues, and of course, fraud. Other consumers are simply resistant to change and are comfortable in viewing the merchandise on a computer screen rather than in person. Thus, it also gives us understanding of the limitations of the e-commerce. Well, we should consider this as a few: the lack of system security, reliability standards, and some communication protocols. Well, if you are hearing the news, the Philippine e-commerce platform is somehow evolving, but during way back 10 years ago, so the security as well, given the infrastructure is not yet that good. Well, kung bababasihan natin ang connectivity natin ngayon compared to other countries, we're lagging but we are improving. Kumbaga, lalo na ngayon at the onset of the pandemic, napakahirap mag-aral kapag hindi maayos ang signal nyo. Well, kaya kinraft yung ganitong klaseng modality para mas maunawaan ng mga classmate nyo na hindi maayos ang signal o yung kanilang internet reception. Of course, there is a lack of telecommunication bandwidth. Software development tools are still evolving and changing rapidly. Difficulty in integrating internet and commerce software with existing applications and databases. Well, vendors sometimes may need special web servers and other infrastructures in addition to network service. So those are some of the limitations as far as e-commerce is concerned. Now, let us dwell to somehow understand the intermediaries of e-commerce. Intermediaries are companies that stand between the communicating parties and assist or add value to the exchange or by facilitating the production, selection, delivery, or presentation of information. Broadly, intermediaries include those parties that are involved between the online buyers and sellers. So we have the connection providers. They are telephone service providers, wireless service providers, also the cable and the common carriers. Also, you have the bandwidth providers, which includes the backbone provider, network service providers, network access points, and the VAN or the value-added networks. Considerably, we have the website providers. They are the one who provides the website opportunities. These are the website design and development, managing and consulting, also as well as hosting and content management. You also have the web information system and service providers. These are the application service providers, system developer, development software developer, and enterprise portal softwares, as well as plugins and gateways. And we also have infrastructure hardware and software providers. These are the domain registries, network hardware software, routers and switches, load balancer, client and computer servers, peripherals, operating softwares, communication hardware, communication software, as well as application software and web browsers, as well as groupware. And we have the security service providers. These are the antivirus software, the firewalls that we have, the encryption, the identification and authentication processes, the disaster recovery system. This is important in risk and management issues, and the virtual private network or the VPN. And we have the business service providers. This is the payment mechanisms, payment systems, the advertising services, the supply chain management as far as e-commerce is concerned is under this category. Also, we have the CRM or the customer relationship management, the financial software and services, the brokers, and the auction sites. And lastly, you have the information service providers. These are the portals, the destinations, the search engines, the marketplace itself, as we discussed previously, the virtual communities, the social groups, the social medias, the privacy services and rating services, as well as the shopping bots, which are somehow under the business analytics, which predicts what are the future consumption of a certain category of a consumer, whether they're going the potentiality of whether that consumer would order the same. Now, napakahalaga ng mga intermediaries na to kasi sila ay may ginagampanan na responsibilidad para maging isa katuparan ng e-commerce. Kung babalikan natin ang framework, meron doon nakalagay na support services. So, itong mga intermediaries na to, these are all necessary in order to realize the maximum potential of e-commerce in the industry. Technically, mahalaga ang ginagampanan ng e-commerce lalo na sa kasalukuyang panahon na kinabibilangan natin. Ito ay nagbigay daan para ang iba sa atin ay magkaroon ng negosyo, para sila ay magkaroon ng kinikita sa panahon ng pandemya. Ito din ay nagbibigay ng opportunity sa mga tao na makikonnect o makakuha ng produkto na available sa market. It links the consumer and the producer or the distributor or the e-commerce intermediaries in one place. Well, technically, pwede nating sabihin na malaki ang ginampanan ng e-commerce lalo na sa panahon ng pandemya na nararanasan natin. Ang e-commerce, once we engage in e-commerce, it's not a simple task, but rather it should be utilized as systematic and calculated steps to be successful. As we go on with the next chapter, pag-aaralan naman natin ang iba't ibang situation at iba't ibang aspect ng e-commerce pagdating sa kanyang operations. So, may I encourage you to log in back to our G class, and if you have some queries, you may raise it on our messenger groups, and I highly encourage you to go back again to our online platform so for the feedback and the evaluation as well as activity and assessments. With that, I'll be ending my lecture, a prayer of safety and health for us and our families. This is your teacher, Sir Jekyll. Magandang araw. Stay safe sa lahat. God bless.